Okay, so good morning to everybody. If you're listening to this in the morning, well, good morning. If you're listening to this in the afternoon, good afternoon. You are not seeing me on camera now because my camera is not working. So just listen to my voice and listen to my explanations on these slides, particularly on writing completion and short answer test items. Now, in the previous video, you have learned the rules to follow and important reminders when we are writing or constructing multiple choice type of tests, okay, or multiple choice test items. Now, one of the most common, okay, types of objective tests that teachers do administer in their class is completion and short answer test items, okay? Isa ito sa pinaka ginagamit dahil una, madaling gawin at madali ring i-score, okay? Yung multiple choice kasi, it is considered as the most flexible type of test item or assessment tool because it could actually measure an array of cognitive objectives, and you could explore many possibilities or many questioning techniques using multiple choice test items. But in this type of test, completion and short answer, though they are really easy to make, okay, or to construct, they also have disadvantages. But before we go on discussing the advantage and disadvantages of completion and short answer test items, let me show you first an example of a completion and a short answer test item. Ano bang pagkakaiba ng completion at short answer? Now, before that, um, I would like to review to everybody the objective, or the difference between a selective and supply test. Okay, selective and supply. So, pag sinabing selective, we are choosing the correct answer. So, there are options given to you, and you have to select the correct answer there. An example of a selective type of test is multiple choice and matching type. Pero pag sinabi nating supply, walang options na binigay sa'yo. So, supply tests are kinds of tests wherein you have to supply the correct answer. Okay? So, this is an example of a completion and a short answer test. Okay? Magkaiba sila in a sense kasi pag completion, ito yung kinokompleto natin siya. So, in a sentence, okay, there's a missing word there and you have to complete the word that will make the sentence correct. Okay? And pag sinabi naman nating short answer, most teachers would refer to this as identification. So you have a question or a statement and you have to provide the answer to that question or statement. Okay? So for example, the national flower of the Philippines is blank. This is an example of completion type of test. Okay? And then if you want to transform that into a short answer test, then it will be what is the national flower of the Philippines? Okay, so that is the difference between completion and short answer. Now let's move on with the similarities and contrast of completion and short answer test items. Now, when we talk about completion and short answer, they both cover knowledge and comprehension levels in the Bloom's taxonomy. So they cannot really measure higher level of the Bloom's taxonomy or higher order thinking skills, but mostly they are limited in measuring knowledge and comprehension levels. It asks for recall of information or facts, basically because it covers knowledge, and it answers range from keywords to phrases. So remember that the range for short answer and completion are only keywords and to phrases and not a whole sentence. Okay, not a whole sentence. Differences are the answer is needed to complete the sentence for a completion item, and the answer is being asked from a question or a statement for a short answer, as what I have mentioned a while ago. And then for completion, the blank is placed at the end of the incomplete sentence. And for short answer, the blank is placed before the item number. So, this is not really exclusively, okay? Exclusive na dapat yung blank ay nasa end ng sentence for completion. It could happen that it could be near the end or at the middle of the sentence but never put a blank at the start of a statement in a completion test item, okay? That's a rule. Never put a blank at the start of the sentence or the statement in a completion test item, because always remember the rule of stimulus response. So you have to present the stimulus first before requiring your students to respond from the stimulus. So if you put the blank at the start of a sentence, then that is basically reverting stimulus and response. So you want them to respond first before reading the stimulus. So we want to put the blank at the end or near the end of the sentence for a completion test item. Okay, it's a no-no that you put it on the beginning of the test item. Now for short answer, hindi ibig sabihin na nasa unahan yung blank. Ang sinasabi ng short answer, yung blank ay nandun sa before the statement, before the sentence. So for example, blank tapos number one, it is the national flower of the Philippines. That's why you have to put your answer on the blank provided before the number. So it's not in the sentence. Okay, it's not in the sentence. So yun yung kaibahan ng completion tsaka short answer. Now, ang advantages ng dalawang type of test na to with respect to multiple choice items, madali itong gawin. It's easy to construct compared to multiple choice items, okay? It requires the students to supply or even choose the answer. It is faster to answer and it has better diagnostic info because you avoid here guessing, okay? You really avoid guessing here. For example, in multiple choice items, the students may get the correct answer, but that doesn't mean that they know the correct answer maybe a product of their guessing games. Okay, so you may not be able to diagnose whether the students understand or not the lesson. But for completion and short answer test items, it has better diagnostic info because the students are not provided choices. So, say for example, let's say the question is, or the statement is, the national flower of the Philippines is blank, and they answered waling waling. So they have a misunderstanding of the concept of the national flower of the Philippines. So it could actually provide you, the teacher, a better diagnostic info of what is currently understood by your students. And if you have observe patterns of incorrect understanding, so it's easy for you to reinforce or to make adjustments in your teaching strategies. Disadvantages are it is limited to recalling information. So yun nga sinasabi ko kanina, they are only confined with the levels of knowledge and comprehension or recall or understanding. So hindi siya masyadong umaangat doon sa lower order thinking skills. Higher order thinking skills rather. Handwriting and spelling become a bit of an issue. That is true, especially for students who are tricky. Okay, yung bang isusulat nila yung sagot na malabo tapos pag magche-check na sasabihin nila dun sa nagche-check na ano na ito pala yung gusto niyang isulat or kaya hindi maintindihan nung nagche-check kaya itatanong niya dun sa taong sumagot at kung anong tamang sagot, yun naman sasabihin niya. Basically, because hindi maintindihan yung kanyang isinusulat. So it is important that in your instructions, you have to specifically mention that they have to write legibly their answer because it may really be an issue. Like for spelling, yung ibang bata, they seek for sir, pwede bang ganito, single N? Let's say they are answering the answer to the statement is Missouri, okay? Missouri is double S, okay? Double S. So, let's say they are wondering if you could consider their answer even though if it's single S. Kasi mga ganung bagay. At minsan yung mga teachers nagiging inconsistent sa mga pagkakataon na ganyan. You have to make sure that you have to be consistent with the key answer. So, wrong spelling is actually wrong because one is not the same as tone or whatever that is, okay? Another disadvantage is that students fill the blank with unintended responses. Sometimes they do that. Okay, if they cannot really look for the correct answer from their mind, okay, from the deepest parts of their brain, they really trick you of writing any kind of word which is inappropriate in the blank. Okay, so many times nangyayari yung ganyan. And it can be scored erroneously than other objective formats of tests like multiple choice, madali lang score yun. But for this kind of tests, medyo there are tendencies to erroneously score them. Alright, so this is an example of a completion test. So the first Prime Minister of Canada was blank. Or let's contextualize it. The national hero of the Philippines is blank. So this is completion test. Now, this kind of test is actually wrong, or not really wrong, but it has errors because there could be multiple answers to this question or to this statement. Say for example, ito yung sinasabi natin na unintended responses. So how will you deal with unintended responses even if these responses are correct or not? Okay, let's say for example, the first prime minister of Canada was a very important figure in the confederation, or maybe a member of the conservative party, or a man. Okay, say these are the answers of your pupils or of your students. Would you consider them or not? Would you mark them as correct answers or incorrect answers? Well, if you think about it, these are correct answers. Okay, these are correct answers. So the problem is in your statement, you have not specified what you are really wanting your students to respond. Okay, or to write on the blank. Okay, so how can we make this a better test item? Let's talk about that later. Okay. Another example is Sir John A. Macdonald was born in, let's say, Jose Rizal was born in blank. So let's say in good health, in a house, or in a bed. These are correct answers actually, right? So you may laugh at it, you may say, you may you know, put jokes on this, but if if you think about it, these are correct answers. Okay, it is true that John A. Macdonald was born in a bed, or in a house, or in good health. Okay, so how will you deal with these answers? It is important, therefore, that when you construct test items, completion, or short answer, you have to be very specific with the problem in the statement so that students will be able to figure out what you're trying to ask from them. Okay, so let's now move on with some important reminders when you're writing a completion or short answer test item. So number one, omit only significant words from the statement. Okay, omit only significant words from the statement. So this is an example of an undesirable test item. Every atom has a central blank called a nucleus. Okay, called a nucleus. Central blank called a nucleus. Ano yun? Central what? Central particle? Diba? Pag sinabi nating omit only significant words, when you're trying to write a test item that is completion or short answer, wag yung kukunin mo yung word na hindi naman nabibigyan ng pansin masyado. Okay? So you let your students figure out the significant concept or ideas from a statement or a sentence. So is core more significant than the nucleus? Diba? So that's problematic. Okay? So if you choose to put core there, if you want to ask them the core, that's not really significant. What you want them to ask is about the nucleus. So you think about the main idea. So yun yung itatanong mo sa kanila and not just random words in the sentence. Okay? Which you don't give emphasis after all. Okay? So if you want to make it desirable, then you can transform this statement into every atom has a central core called a blank. So you want them to answer nucleus. Notice, okay, na gumamit din siya ng a or an because you don't want to give clue to your students. Similarly, doon sa multiple choice items natin. Number two, do not omit so many words from the statement that the intended meaning is lost. Okay? Wag naman natin gawing close test yung test item. Pag sinabi natin close test, pag CLOZE, it's a paragraph wherein you omit a lot of words and then students will have to supply the correct words to complete the paragraph. But in a closed test, the statements are standard. So, ito yung pinamemorize mo sa kanila. For example, you wanted to complete the national hymn. Okay, so, land of the morning. Ano na yun? Land of the morning. Returning, di ba? So, may mga words ka doon na i-omit. So, standard yun. Alam nila kung ano ilalagay nila doon because they have memorized it. Okay? Pero pagka naman isang sentence na hindi naman standard, okay, na ginawa mo mismo, tapos ang dami mong words na tatanggalin, matatanggal yung thought nung sentence. At ano na lang yung isasagot ng bata. Di ba? So, it could really uh, loosen the idea of the sentence or the statement. So do not omit so many words. So for example, this one, desirable. The blank were to Egypt as the blank were to Persia and as blank were to early tribes of Israel. So napakarami mong tinatanggal na salita at hindi na malaman ng mga bata kung ano pa ba yung tinatanong mo. So you're eliminating to them the stimulus. So walang stimulus ngayon doon sa iyong sentence. Okay? So you want to make sure that this is avoided. Okay? Desirable, the pharaohs were to Egypt as the blank were to Persia and as blank were to early tribes of Israel. So you're giving them a clue here, okay? Because your analogy is pharaohs were to Egypt. So what is for Persia? Kasi nilagay mo sa una, the blank were to Egypt as the blank were to Persia and as blank were to early tribes of Israel. So they are like, you don't know what is asked here because there is no stimulus given to the students. Okay, so you have to make sure that you avoid this kind of practice. Number three, avoid obvious clues to the correct response. Okay, you avoid obvious clues. Again, we want our items to be valid. So if you're giving clues to your students, then you're really not measuring authentic learning from your students. Okay, so undesirable, for example, most of the United States libraries are organized according to the blank decimal system. Um, there's only one decimal system for organizing books in the library. We call that Dewey Decimal System. So you're giving them a clue there because decimal system is a clue for the correct answer, which is Dewey Decimal System. Okay, this is a desirable one. Which organizational system is used by most of the United States libraries? Blank. So you're not giving them a clue. Okay, there are many ways that we could organize books in the libraries, and one of which is Dewey Decimal System, and that's the only type of organizing books in the libraries that ends with decimal system. Okay, so you have to avoid that. Number four, be sure there is only one correct response. Ito yung sinasabi natin na madalas sa mga bata, sinasabi sa teachers na, Ma'am, consider mo na. And so, itong teacher naman na to sasabihin niya, sige na nga, consider na natin. We have to avoid that, okay? As much as possible, there should be only one correct response to an incomplete statement. So, for example, trees which shed their leaves annually are blank. What kind of trees are these? There are many kinds of trees that shed their leaves annually. Okay? But we can make it more specific by saying trees which shed their leaves annually are called blank. So you are asking a general term referring to trees that shed their leaves annually. So you're not asking just only for an example of a tree that you know or that shed their leaves annually, but you're asking for the general term. Okay? Fifth one is that avoid grammatical clues to the correct response. So, ito yung sinasabi ko kanina na pag gumamit ka ng a, of course, automatically, the succeeding word there should be starting with consonant. Pag gumamit ka ng an naman, the succeeding word should start with a vowel. So, we want to eliminate that unintended clue for the student. So, you have to use a slash an or a open parenthesis and close parenthesis so that they will not be given a clue on the correct answer. Okay. And of course, this is another rule that we have to follow. Okay. The sixth one, and this is the last one. If possible, put the blank at the end of the statement rather at the beginning. Okay. This is what I had just have mentioned to you. Okay. If possible, but many books would really mandate this. Okay. You have to put the blank near the end or at the end of the sentence or of the statement. Okay. Asking for a response before the students understand the intent of the statement can be confusing and may require more reading time. So, uulit-ulitin nila yan. Kasi nga, nauna yung tanong mo. Nauna yung gusto mong sagot nila. Okay? So, this is an undesirable test item. You can put that here. You could revise that by saying the measure of central tendency that is most affected by extremely high or low scores is the correct answer there is the mean or the mean. Okay? Pag ganito kasi, blank is the measure of central tendency that is most affected by extremely high or low scores. So, tendency is na una yung iisipin mo ng tamang sagot. But ito, binigay mo na sa'yo yung clue, yung idea, yung context para masagot mo para ma-recall mo yung tamang sagot. Okay? So, those are the rules that we have to keep in mind whenever we are writing items such as completion and short answer test items. Okay? So, in the next video, I will be explaining to you the rules naman in writing matching type test. Okay? Thank you for listening.